I struggle to put into words, to myself, how much it's helped me and what it's done for me. But whoever has done this is one of the most amazing. That it's not just that person though as well. It's the family as well. That say for instance, it was someone's son that's done this for me. The reason that son has done that is because the way that their parents have brought them up. You know, it's not just the son that's helped me. It's the parents that have helped me. It's every part of that family. It's every single one of them that's had something to do with that person deciding that they want to give this gift to someone else. I can't say thank you because that's just not enough. Just give him a big hug and probably cry a bit more over the salt. And I would genuinely love to develop some sort of relationship with them just for their peace of mind, because I want them to see, I want to talk to them, and I want them to know how bad my life was beforehand to how it is now, and how it is that their son, husband, whoever it was, has done for me. It's difficult. It's difficult, but it's amazing. I don't know.
Marc is joining the pod today to talk all about his double lung transplant and the journey he has been on with that. Transplant stories are always something that I hold very close to me, and I just think it's a topic that still needs so much awareness on. So welcome, Marc. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
Where do we start with your story? Shall we talk about life pre-transplant, what it was like? With a lot of transplant stories, I guess, it's the best place to start. But for some people, it's something they've known is coming. For some people, it just literally comes out of nowhere. So, really interested to hear kind of your story before transplant.
Well, it was to be honest with you, it came completely out of the blue for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't as if I had some long underlying health condition or anything like that. I've always been active. I've always played football, cricket, golf. I mean, I played to quite a high standard football. I played for two different teams. I managed a team as well. I played on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday morning. I've always been really, really active my entire life. And then I stopped playing football when I started to feel a little bit. I just thought I was just getting old, to be honest with you, and I was a little bit unfit when I was probably about 35. And I just put it down to, well, getting old, maybe it's time to sort of hang my boots up as such.
Yeah.
My dad had underlying health conditions. He had emphysema, and he passed away. He was 59 when he died.
Right. Sorry to hear that.
It was his breathing, his lungs basically gave up. But I didn't, you think you're immune to these things. You don't think these things will ever affect you. So again, as I say, I just put these breathing things down to just, maybe lack of fitness. Maybe I wasn't doing as much. Maybe I wasn't, no one, everyone gets old, don't they? And I put it down to that. And I remember I was walking to work one morning. The place I was living in a flat in Chelmsford in Essex.
Yeah.
And where I was, I only had one car park space. So I had a car and I had my work van as well. So I used to park it in a side street, and I woke up in the morning. It was early one morning. I was walking down this long road that I walked down, every day. And then all of a sudden I stopped about halfway down and I was really out of breath and I couldn't work it out. And I'm almost over on my haunches, trying to catch my breath. And, I didn't really think much. I just thought, maybe it's a virus or something like that. But it turns out, that was the beginning of what happened.
Yeah.
I was a smoker. I wasn't a heavy smoker, I'd say. My dad, as an example, my dad was a ridiculously heavy smoker. He smoked, crazy amount of cigarettes. But I wasn't, I'd smoke probably a packet a day, if that, sometimes a little bit more if I was drinking. It was just, so I wasn't a massively heavy smoker. But my condition got deteriorated. It got worse. And I remember one Christmas, I wasn't well over Christmas. And again, it's the time of year when everyone's not very well. I thought I'd had a virus. This was, I believe, in 2012. So I was 35 years old. And I went to the hospital in between Christmas and New Year. They took my blood oxygen levels, and basically the emergency doctor said to me, "You need to go to hospital right away. Your levels are that low." It was then that I went into hospital, and I was diagnosed with severe COPD, basically emphysema, which is what my dad had died from. It turns out that I had the gene, and unluckily, that was my diagnosis.
Really, really difficult. And that was something I was going to ask you, was it hereditary at all? Because I know sometimes it can be if you've already had kind of similar signs and symptoms in the family. So yeah, you've obviously been diagnosed with COPD. So how quickly were you then added to the transplant list? Was this years later down the line? Was it
Well,
kind of?
well, initially, what it was is they thought, because the way the emphysema was, I could get the air into the lungs, but I couldn't get the air out, because basically the top half of the lungs were dying as such. I wasn't able to get the air out. So what would happen basically is my lungs would stay inflated. So therefore my diaphragm wouldn't work. So I'd get out of breath talking. I wouldn't be able to bend down to do up my shoelaces, or I
Yeah.
couldn't walk and talk on the phone, and those sorts of things. So the initial plan was that I would have lung reduction surgery. So I had lung reduction surgery in 2018. I think it was August 2018, where basically they chopped off, because my right lung was worse than my left lung. So they chopped off the top third of my right lung, with the plan is to make more space within the cavity so that the diaphragm could start working again, and I would be able to expel the air. But unfortunately, when that was done, I had a bulla, which is like an air pocket, appear on the side. So there was like a balloon on the side of my lung, which actually took up more space than the lung did originally. So I was probably worse off after the surgery. So that didn't work. So from there, they decided what they wanted to then go in. So in 2018, I went in and I had some valves, actually on my birthday. I went in and had some valves inserted into the bulla, some one-way valves, these tiny little, it was all done sort of down the throat. And the plan was that they would put these valves in that would let the air out of the air pocket, that's the bulla that was on the side of the lungs, freeing up the space. But again, that didn't work. So it was then the doctor I was seeing at the time, was at Adam Brooks Hospital in Cambridge. He put me forward because of my age. I mean, I was 35. By then I was 38.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed at 35, and by then I was 38, and I'm still considered quite young. So, which was nice to hear. It's always nice to hear at that age that you're still considered
35,
young.
yeah, 35's young.
Yeah. So he then put me forward. He then asked me if it would be something that I would be interested in, if it's something because of my, I was I'd had quite a good lifestyle. I was relatively fit. I was relatively strong. And he thought I would be an ideal candidate for a lung transplant. So I was then given loads of things that I had to do, sort of exercises I had to go through, pulmonary rehab classes that I had to do, and all these sorts of things to prove that I was serious about, going through the whole process, which I did all of those. I mean, going back to when I was diagnosed, when I was told it was down to smoking, I stopped instantly. There was, I think, I went into hospital and I never smoked again after that.
Yeah.
It was done. I'd basically done everything that they'd asked me to do, and I was an ideal candidate for a transplant, even though most of the lung transplant patients that you hear of are cystic fibrosis sufferers or something like that. So it wasn't as if I was going to die in the next 6 months if I didn't get a transplant, but the way my lungs were going, maybe 10, 15 years, and that would have been, and it would have been a horrible, it would have got deteriorated, and it wouldn't have been, I didn't have a great quality of life anyway, but my quality of life would have got a lot worse. So they put me forward. There was various meetings, and eventually I was accepted as a transplant patient. I think I went on the list in 2021.
Right.
So that's 9 years after I was diagnosed. So I've had the reduction, I've done all the rehab. So it was 2021 I went on the transplant list.
And mentally, before obviously we talk about the transplant, you've said that so many things weren't working and surgeries that you'd had. What was that time like for you? I'm guessing it was a really, really difficult patch to keep going through and being told, there's nothing we can do to help you.
Well, it wasn't really. I mean, going through the surgeries, and like they'd say to me, right, we need to do this for you. It was relatively easy. It was like, I'm right, I'm there. That's fine. Let's do it. Let's make this better. It was very downheartening once you've gone through the reduction surgery. The reduction surgery was. This sounds, I'm not being flippant about this or anything, but it wasn't too bad. The recovery was fine. It was, I felt an immediate difference. I'll be honest, straight away I felt an immediate difference, but that lasted for about 2 weeks. And then it started to go downhill. But I've almost got the attitude of, right, we've done that, what's next? What can we do next? You know, there is other things that they can do. They'd made
Yeah.
it quite clear that this wasn't, right, well, this hasn't worked, then, you know, this is it for you. You know, there are other options for us. So I was quite up for it, I suppose. I was fine for anything that they wanted to do for me. So I kind of remained quite positive. It was difficult on a personal level because I trained as an electrician, and I then moved into fire and security as a fire and security engineer, which involves you being quite mobile, and you know, and I carried on working throughout because that's what I always wanted. You know, I didn't ever want to stop and give up. You know, as much as I can move about, and as much as I can keep moving, I will. So I sort of remained quite positive. I spent a lot of the day hiding when I couldn't breathe and those sorts of things. But I was very positive about, you know, the next step. I wasn't ready to give up. I wasn't ready to stop working and, you know, just sit down and wait for the next step. I was, you know, very proactive and very positive.
Yeah. And with your dad's story then, did he kind of have the same like surgeries as you? Did he have any of that support, or did
Well,
he sadly just end up passing
had the
away?
lung reduction surgery
Right.
in at the Royal Brompton Hospital, but I mean it was very different when he had it. He had it a good few years before I did. I mean,
Yeah.
mine was all done through keyhole. The whole thing was done keyhole surgery. He basically had his entire chest cut open and his rib cage removed. Then they did it that way. But he was going through a really difficult time in his life. He'd had a breakdown of his marriage to the woman that gave birth to me.
Yeah.
For completely, you know, that's another story for another time. But yeah, and he suffered really badly with his mental health, and basically, I kind of think that he kind of gave up. That you know,
Yeah.
he was told to do these things. If he didn't do these things, it would be the end. And he was a bit old school as well. You know how, you know, I'll live my life how I want to type thing. So he
Yeah.
didn't. You know, he had the lung reduction surgery, but it didn't benefit him at all because, you know, he carried on smoking. You know, he'd go out. He'd go out and meet his mates and have a few drinks because he wasn't working. That was his social thing. He was never anything like a drink problem or anything like that. He was a very social drinker, but he didn't do everything that he should have done. So it didn't go any further than lung reduction for him.
Yeah. And do you think that motivated you more to kind of stick to everything because you'd
100%,
witnessed what he'd been
100%,
through?
because I'd seen it all. I'd seen what it did.
Yeah.
I'd witnessed firsthand what my illness had done to someone else. So
Yeah.
it did give me the motivation to do everything the correct way. And my partner Faye as well. She was an absolute rock for me. You know, she's been there from day one. You know, through even from the diagnosis, even through to, you know, the surgery in 2022. So yeah, she's been amazing. So she was a great help to me.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll go back to that as well, because I think one thing when we talk about like organ donation and transplant stories is obviously your story, you know, the person that's been through it is the most important, but I think we forget about, excuse me, the families as well.
Yeah.
In terms of like what your partner had to go through. It's obviously a massive worry and stress for partners as well and family members watching someone that's going for a transplant. So that I think is definitely something we can.
It was harder for her. It was definitely harder. The whole process of the transplant was more difficult for her than it was for me, without doubt. You know, the 14-hour operation. She sat there waiting, you know, to know whether I recovered. You know, I had a good sleep. Basically, that was the way it was. You know, I knew nothing about it, so it was a lot more difficult for her.
100%. So going to transplant then, when you've been told you're going to be put on the list, what was your initial feelings about that? Were you scared? Were you, I don't know if excited is the right word, but how were you feeling when that news was told to you?
Excited. Oh, without doubt, I was excited because this was, you know, the two previous procedures I'd had, the transplant, the reduction and the valves, hadn't worked. So although, you know, they had said to me, this is our final option, this is what we've got, I was really excited because I had it in my head and I talked myself into the fact that this was it. This was what was gonna change my life. And I was really, really excited about it and really, really enthusiastic about it.
Amazing. And how do you honestly prep for something like that? Did you look into it at all? Were you someone that just wanted to go in with no knowledge? Like, yeah, what would you advise? And obviously, I always say everyone's kind of views on this are, you know, completely erroneous, whatever works for you. But did you want to know what would happen, or did you just want to go in and just get it over and done with?
Well, there was a documentary series on the BBC. I think it was called Surgeons Under the Knife. I think it was. It was on the iPlayer, and it was basically at the Royal Papworth Hospital, which is where I had my transplant.
Yeah.
And it was they showed a guy coming in for a lung transplant, and they showed the procedure during the operation, and they showed and then they showed the aftermath of him as well as he left the hospital. And I watched that documentary. I sat down and watched it with Faye, my partner, and it was like, well, this is amazing. Look at what this has done for him. It showed him taking his first breath outside afterwards, and how incredible he felt. And I was after seeing that, I thought, well, I've got no worries about this at all. Little did I know, they only show you the good parts. But yeah, no, I had no fear whatsoever going into it.
Yeah,
absolutely none. Because I kind of figured that the way my life was and the quality of life I was having, it was only going to get worse. So if there was that slight chance that it was going to get better, then I was going to grab that with both hands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how long did it kind of take? I know it's like, how long is a piece of string with when you're going to get that call for a transplant, but did you have any calls in between? I know some transplant patients will get a call and they're ready for surgery, and then sadly it doesn't go ahead because the organ doesn't work.
I had two of those, unfortunately. 2 weeks after going onto the transplant list, so I'd only been on the list for 2 weeks, I got a phone call to say that they'd found a set of lungs. Now I've got quite a rare blood group, which actually worked in my favour, because you'd think that would hinder your chances of actually getting a donor, but it meant the lungs that become available, there wasn't, because what happens is it's like a meeting. These donors become available, and then you get all these transplant doctors and stuff. They have a meeting and say, right, I've got this patient, they've got this is all their blood group, whatever else, they need these lungs. They're gonna, they've only got X amount, and it's whoever's most suitable for those lungs, or whoever needs them most gets that transplant. Now, because of my rare blood group, there wasn't a lot of competition for them. So I got that first call within 2 weeks of being on the list. Now, that was in the middle of the night. That was about 2:00 in the morning. My phone went off. Now, prior to this, I was told that I wasn't allowed to be any more than 1 hour away from home as soon as I went on the transplant list.
Yeah.
So work-wise, the company I worked for at the time, I was working as a fire and security engineer at the time, were really good, to be fair, with it. They arranged all my diaries so that I'd never be more than an hour away from home. I ever did go anywhere, then I had to phone the hospital and let them know where I would be so they could come and pick me up. So I got that phone call about 2:00 in the morning, and and it was like, wow. And I remember Faye waking up as well, and I took the call and I said, oh, they've got a set of lungs for me. So it was like they said, right, well, an ambulance will be with you in an hour to come and pick you up. So we need you to sort of get ready. Now, I already had a bag packed. It was all stuff that had been done as soon as I'd got on the list, just to sort of prepare me. So it was all a bit of a blur in that hour, because I got up and I had a drink, and I thought I'll have a shower. So I had myself a shower while I was waiting. And then I had a little walk around just outside, just sort of up and down. I wasn't nervous. I'd say I was excited about it. And then the ambulance came, and they took me to the Papworth Hospital. I live in Essex, not far from Stansted Airport. And they took me to the Papworth Hospital at Cambridge. They took me in, and I was straight in, and so they checked me into, it's all individual rooms there. There's no wards. They checked me in. I went to see the anaesthetist. That was all done. My chest was shaved in preparation for the surgery. I had all the COVID tests and the swabs, the MRSA swabs, and I was basically prepped for surgery, and I was ready. So the transplant specialist, a guy called Paul, lovely guy, really, really nice guy, came in and he spoke to me and he says, right, we're just doing the final checks on the lungs just to make sure that everything's fine, and then I'll be back shortly. So I'm sat there in the room with Faye, and we're waiting, and it must have been an hour or so later, and Paul's come in. He says, look, I'm really sorry to tell you, but on the final checks on the donor, they've detected signs of emphysema, which is what I had anyway. So they said the transplant's not going to go ahead. So it was kind of, and it was like, you can go home. And it was like, wow. Luckily, Faye had followed in the ambulance, so we had a car there. So, I just remember getting a McDonald's on the way home. It was driving home, and it was then all of a sudden, I had the following day off of work, and then I was back at work the next day. Yeah. And it was almost a bit surreal, as if it sort of it hadn't happened, but it had. So, but I hadn't given up hope because I was still on the list and it was going to happen again. So, yeah, that was unfortunate. And then the second time, I think that was 2021, April 2021, and then in October 2022. So this was over here. It was 14 months after that. I got another call, which again was in the middle of the night, and the same thing happened. I went to see. The ambulance came. I got up, had a shower. The ambulance came and picked me up. I went into hospital, and I was a little bit more. I don't know. I wasn't as nervous this time because that it wouldn't happen because I'd had that before. So I'd prepared myself that if it wasn't going to happen this time. So I'm quite mentally quite strong. So, and I'd got myself ready. So again, Paul's come in again. He sat down. He says, right. He says, we found you a donor, but I've got to try and remember which way round this is now. They've been declared brain dead, the donor. They're on life support, but the doctor needs to confirm that they're clinically dead before we can switch the life support machine off. So he said, I'm keeping you fully aware of everything that's going on. So he's then come in about half an hour later and said, right, everything's okay. The life support machine's just been switched off. But now what happens now is they have to let the patient, pass away naturally.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't happen within an hour and a half, then the lungs aren't any good for transplant. They deteriorate and they can't be used. So I'm sat there waiting for someone to die before I can have their lungs. And that was a bit hard to take. Now, this person, whoever it was, I don't know, it took 3 hours. So the transplant didn't go ahead. So that was the second call, and that was tough. That one was tougher because I was waiting for someone to die before I could extend. My life could be extended. Before you think about it and you don't think about, because the donor, you think about they're already gone. It's already done. You're not waiting for someone. Someone, not only their family and whatever else. And I remember the transplant coordinator Paul saying to me as well that it's really hard on the donor's family as well, because it was the donor's wish that they wanted to give their organs. They wanted to help someone after death, but they're not able to do it. So that was quite tough. And again, another McDonald's on the way home. That was. So and yeah, that was the second one. And then the third call I got, which was on the 13th of November 2022. So it was only like 3 months later. I'll never forget, it was a Sunday morning, and I was sat watching, it was the World Cup final, the England one day cricket World Cup final. I was sat watching it on the telly, and my phone's rang, and it was a withheld number. Now, along with a lot of people, I don't normally answer a withheld number, do you? You think, well, especially on a Sunday as well, why are you hiding a number from me? But for some reason, I answered it. I answered the call, and it was Paul, and he said, again, the transplant coordinator, he said, we've got a set of lungs for you. And straight away, I didn't think it was going to happen. My attitude was I was going to have a morning out. I was going to go to Papworth. I was going to get checked in. I was going to spend the morning in my room, and then have a McDonald's on the way home. That was my little ritual that I'd got into, and that's kind of the way I thought it was going to go. So again, I've had a shower. Got my bag ready, because my bag wasn't packed this time because I was just, I don't know. It was just my whole attitude was, I don't know when this is going to happen. I don't want to walk past this bag every day and remind me, it's just put it to the back of my mind. If it happens, it happens. And then I got then the ambulance came and picked me up. It was this ambulance car that came and picked me up. And again, Faye followed in the car, and I was chatting to the ambulance guy, and he said to me, he says, I can't believe how laid back you are. He said, you're going to have a lung transplant, a double lung. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I genuinely don't believe it's going to happen. So I got to the hospital, and the same things happened again. I got checked in, and the transplant coordinator came in. He says, we've got the lung. He explained it all to me. I did all the MRSA swabs and the COVID and all those sorts of things. He said, I'll be back to you in a minute. And I laid down and had a little sleep, Ella. I had a little nap.
Yeah.
And he's come back in. He says, what are you doing? He said, why? He said, you're just about to have a double lung transplant and you're having a nap. I said, honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. He said, look, we're just about to switch the life support machine off. And from my experience, it's going to happen quite quickly. So I said, right, okay then. So off he's gone. I've got to sleep again, haven't I? I've laid back down and had a little nap again. So, and it's not like I hadn't had any sleep the night before either.
Yeah.
You know, I just felt so relaxed and so blasé because I just didn't think it was going to happen. So he's come back in again and he's like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Right," he says, 20 minutes later, he says, "Right, it's happening." So I didn't even have a chance to kind of think about it.
Like process it,
It was all, I was in the gown already. It was all, you know, there was a lot of movement around me. A few doctors came in. There was a few things done. Some blood was taken and whatever else. And at that point, I still didn't believe it was going to happen. Just didn't. And then they came to take me down and I said goodbye to Faye. Again, still not even thinking that this was going to happen. That, you know, there was going to be, I'd been let down twice. Not let down, but sorry, that's the wrong word to use. It hadn't happened twice. So I just still think, you know, I thought to myself, right, I'm going to go down to surgery. I'm going to get there. And at the last minute, they're going to say, "Oh, no, can't be done." So I was so relaxed and so blasé about it. And I remember even talking to the anaesthetist when I was I'd been wheeled into surgery and they were putting I have to get this round the right way because I get catheter and cannula mixed up quite a lot and they're very, very different things. The catheter, the cannula, the one in the arm, yes, they were putting that in to put the anaesthetic into me. And at that point, I'm chatting. He's talking to me about holidays and things, and I'm just chatting away. And I remember saying as well. I said, "Oh, they've told me that I'm not to wear anything underneath my gown. Are they playing some sort of joke on me? You know, is that what it is?" And I was laughing and joking. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up in recovery. So that was it for me. You know, I didn't even have any time really to get nervous about it because even down to that last minute when I was even being administered with the anaesthetic, because of the 2 times before that it had happened, I didn't think it was going to happen, which was probably really good because it didn't give me any time to worry about it or anything like that. But yeah, so as I said to you earlier, it was a lot more difficult for Faye because the operation lasted for 14 hours because you have 2 surgeons that do it. Basically, one surgeon does one lung and then the other one does the other lung just because of, you know, what's involved in the operation and, you know, the concentration and the effort that go to how tired they get doing it. So, so it was a lot harder for her and probably, you know, family as well, because she'd created a WhatsApp group of friends and family and just sort of keeping them up to date with what was going on. And people were asking her questions. And again, going back to the transplant coordinator, Paul, he sat with Faye for the whole time. He was amazing. Absolute incredible superhero. You know, without, you know, it would have been, and it was tough for her, but it would have been a lot tougher if he hadn't been there for the support. And, you know, as much as the people slate the NHS and say this, that, they're amazing people, every single one of them that you know. And so that was it. And then, 14 hours later, I'm in recovery. I'm in ICU and, don't remember a lot about it. It's weird because I had like an out of body experience of looking at myself because you have this big tube that's inserted down to and into your lungs. And I can still remember it now. I'm sat there looking at myself while they're actually pulling this tube out and I'm coughing and there's a lot of saliva and stuff coming up. And that's apparently exactly what happened. Now, I had no idea. So I had this out of body experience where I'm looking at myself actually being brought round. So, which is weird. I still, you know, I've never believed in anything like that, out of body experiences or, you know, the paranormal or anything. That's just not people do. That's fine. You know, that's what they believe in, but not me. And it was, I had that out of body experience and speaking to the nurses that were on with me that day, that's exactly what happened. It was really, really bizarre. But and then I was in ICU for 2 days, and then I was transferred onto the ward. And I remember being wheeled onto the ward, and being put in. I say ward into the rooms there. But I was so the drugs that the NHS have got are absolutely amazing. I was hallucinating. I was seeing it was I was very euphoric, shall we say? Yeah. So that was kind of how it all went, and then that was what happened afterwards. There were a lot of issues with the recovery side of it as well afterwards, which were unfortunate. But yeah, it was, you know, I felt the difference straight away. You could, you know, I had a lot of machines and tubes and drains and whatever attached to me. But it was instant. I could feel the difference.
No, I love that. I mean, it's killing me just you talking about going back to sleep every time this guy's coming in telling you
Honestly,
that you have the transplant. But
yeah.
it sounds like that worked so well for you because you
Oh,
were just
100%.
so zen and like
Yeah,
relaxed that you didn't
100%. Yeah,
think, a massive life-changing surgery is about
yeah.
to happen. Like, I would have just loved to have seen their faces every time that you're just sat there just going back to sleep.
Yeah,
But I think
as
that's,
I
yeah,
said
I
to you,
think
it
it's
wasn't
great.
even like, I mean, I'd had a decent night's sleep the night before, so it wasn't even like I was tired. I was just
Yeah.
really, really relaxed, and so I just don't think this is going to happen. And as I say, that was great for me. That was a really, really, good way for it to be for me because, it was. I don't want to say it was easy and it was a breeze because that's
No.
unfair because for what people go through, but that's how it felt for me. I went to
Mm,
sleep and woke up with new lungs.
yeah.
It was, there was no worry, no stress. There were some issues after the surgery. I had what they thought. Well, I had an epidural inserted. It was like on a line. It wasn't an injection. It was a constant feed of painkillers because one of the transplant nurses that looked after me on the ward, again, amazing people. There's one in particular I'll talk about a bit later on, that are just incredible, incredible people. Now they had this. It was normally with because it's the sort of thing that you'd have like during pregnancy. It's sort of to numb the bottom half. Now they were trying to numb the top half, so it was halfway up my back in my spine. This drip was inserted. Well, I don't know how long it was into it. I think it was about a week or so after I'd been in hospital. There was an air block in there, so I
Right.
wasn't basically getting any pain relief. Now I'm pretty good with pain. I'm pretty good at handling pain. I've had a lot of injuries over the years, football and other things, stupid things I've done, and I'm quite good with pain. But this was like nothing I had ever experienced before. I remember laying in bed and I was in tears. This was in the middle of the night. I was in tears, and there's the the lead nurse. I want to say matron, but that's not a term that's used anymore. She's like the head on the transplant on the ward. She was absolutely incredible. It's like she prioritized me. She could see the pain I was in. I remember sitting there just saying to her, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I cannot do this pain. It's the whole top half. I can't even. They say you can't explain the pain of a toothache, but I can't even begin to, I can't begin to relate this to any pain that I've ever felt in my life. Um, and I was given some oral morphine to help, but that didn't even touch it. Now
Yeah.
she went away and she was talking to emergency doctors and she was saying, right, I think he needs morphine and tramadol. That's what I think is going to help him. A high dose of tramadol and a high dose of morphine. And there's one other doctor saying, well, I'm not sure. I think we should just keep him on morphine. And she fought and fought and fought that she's saying that. And that's what I was given in the end. And I basically think she saved my life that night
Yeah.
because the pain, I just didn't want it anymore. Just didn't want to do it anymore. That was it. I would have quite happily just put a pillow over me now, finish me off. I just cannot cope with this pain. And she got my pain under control. And then the epidural was because it doesn't kick in straight away. So then that was then put back into my back, and then the pain was relatively free after that. It wasn't too bad. There was a lot of things because I was given what they say they did it through a clamshell, so they cut me underneath like the breast here,
Mm.
and then going that way. So I'm cut from the centre of my chest all the way around pretty much to underneath my armpit. So the pain you've got, any sort of
Yeah.
movement or anything else, it's quite difficult to move about. But it's the internal pain as well. That's the thing. But then they then removed because you have constant drains in. You have all these tubes that are into you, draining all the fluid out your lungs. Now they were quite happy that all the fluid had come out, so they removed all the drains. And then on one of my scans one night, they detected some air in my stomach, so they thought I had a perforated bowel. So I went nil by mouth for 9 days. So I couldn't not even a sip of water. Even the medication I took, it was capsules with powder in. I had to empty the powder out onto a spoon and take it that way. I could have a sip of water and that was it. I wasn't allowed to have anything. Now, the way that they thought, the best way to get this air out of me was to put another drain in. Now, when I had these drains put in, I was under the anaesthetic from when I had the surgery, the initial one. So, but this one was going to be done while I was in my room. So they basically came in, this doctor, I can't remember his name, big Scottish fella. He came in and the first thing he said to me, he says, "This is going to be quite painful. You have my permission to call me whatever you want." He said, "I'm very thick-skinned. You can call me whatever name you want." And he said, "I've just brought this nurse in with me here, and she's going to hold your hand for you." And I thought, I've just been through that. I can handle this pain. It's absolutely fine. And I'm thinking, I don't need this nurse to hold my hand for me. So what they basically did is they gave me like a local anaesthetic. So they just injected the area in my side. Now, this surgeon, this doctor, he then made an incision, and the idea is to push a tube into me through my rib cage into the area so that they can take the air out. Well, as they've made this incision, the gap between my ribs wasn't big enough for this tube to fit through. So now, this makes me squirm every time I talk about this. But so what the doctor then had to do, bearing in mind I'm awake at this point. Now, Faye's had to walk out of the room at this point. She's told she could stay in over the other side, but she's had to walk out. They've made the incision slightly bigger, and this doctor has got 2 fingers. He's put those 2 fingers into my rib cage and twisted them slightly just to open up my rib cage enough to get the tube through. I don't know, that there's that really, really naughty word that no one ever likes to use, and I don't know how I didn't use it at that point.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I was quite restrained, and that poor nurse that was holding my hand, I think I broke every finger in her hand. It was absolutely horrendous. But again, it was all done to help me, and it did work. I then went into AFib as well, so my heartbeat went irregular as a result of that as well. So that had to be monitored constantly. But it probably put me in hospital for an extra 2 weeks than I should have been. And then once all that was cleared, I was up and walking about, and I still had some machines attached to me. So I'd walk round with, Faye would be following me around with, carrying various drains and whatever else. But once all that was out of the way, it was, I say plain sailing, but it was getting to that was the difficult bit. But not long after that, they let me go outside and take my first breath of cold air. And this was December. This was December 2022, early December that I went out. And I can still remember that now, that walking outside and that cold breath, that fresh breath. And I went walking around the grounds of the hospital, and they told me to be out for 20 minutes. I was out for 45 minutes. I just couldn't, I just didn't want to stop. I've gone from being able to walk about 10 feet with having to stop and catch my breath and not being able to talk while I do it. So, and I'm just walking round. And I remember going outside, and Faye took a video of it as we were walking, and I stopped and I looked at her and I started doing some star jumps. Like that, just showing off to myself that I could do these things. And it was absolutely incredible. And I went back into the ward, and they went, "Where have you been?" I said, "I just didn't want to stop." And they laughed about it. It wasn't a massive problem for them. I think secretly they'd looked out anyway and seen me. They weren't overly worried about it. But I was in hospital for 4 weeks in total, which you'd think if you're going in for a double lung transplant, it's going to be months and months in hospital and rehab. I remember the physio coming to discharge me and saying, "I genuinely can't believe that you've had a transplant. Your levels are incredible. Everything you're doing, the exercising I'm asking you to do, you're having no problem with them whatsoever," which is probably stood me in good stead from, the fitness I'd had throughout, my entire life from football and other sports that I'd played. So I was relatively strong anyway. So I got signed off by absolutely everyone. And that was it. I was home. I was given a very, very big bag of medication to take away with me, which I still take now, which I will be taking for life. I have these anti-rejection drugs that I have to take and other things, which is not a problem. I've got a little routine that I do. I've got various alarms that go off at different times that I take this medication. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
It's a journey,
But the journey, the outcome is incredible. What it's done for me is amazing.
And I know you said obviously you didn't have long to process it because you were adamant that you weren't going to have a transplant on that particular day when you had it. But before this even happened, and I know this is quite a difficult question when we talk about like dying and stuff, but was it something that did ever cross your mind? Were you ever afraid that you'd go into transplant and not wake up from it, or was that something you just refused to go there?
No, not even at all, because the way my life was and the difference of how my life was to how it had been, it's, I didn't, if that was it, that was it. It couldn't it could only get worse. For it to get worse how it was, and it's a horrible thing to say, but if I hadn't woken up, then I mean I wouldn't know much about it anyway. As I say, it would be difficult
Yeah.
for family, friends, family. It would have been a lot more difficult for them. I say that they probably wouldn't care, but it wouldn't. I wouldn't know anything about it. I wouldn't know anything about it. I'd have gone in there, I've had that surgery, and then that's it. So I wasn't afraid of it at all. I'd made sure that I'd not got my affairs in order, but I'd made sure that everything was okay, and it wasn't, and if that was it, that was it. Basically, that was kind of my attitude about it. Because as I say, I'd seen my dad go through it, and I didn't want to go through that. That's not what I wanted to do. I'd rather. I'm not saying I'd rather end it, but I'd rather it ended as such than me go through that. I was never in that stage where I thought, oh, I've got to, I can't do this anymore. But my attitude to it was, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I won't know anything about it.
Absolutely. And just backtracking slightly, going back to like waiting for those calls, which I can imagine, is quite stressful, the anxiety of it, like when is that call coming? How did you get on with life and just carrying on as normal when you don't know when that call is gonna come through? Do you have any advice to people? Did you just carry on as normal? Like I know you said you still kept working, and obviously with your transplant, you're quite lucky it did come quite fast. Some people do have to wait years and stuff, but how did you get on with those days whilst waiting for that call?
I think thing to start with, every time my phone rang, from going on the transplant list up until I had the first call, every time my phone rang, at silly times as well. Like, normally your phone doesn't really ring after 8 o'clock, does it? People, if they're going to get in contact with you, they'll message you, or any sort of phone call or anything like that, your heart would skip a beat. You'd think, before you actually looked at your phone and then you'd see a mate's name, you would have that initial. But the longer it went on I'd had the first one, and then, because it'd only been, 4 weeks, 2 weeks it was, since I'd gone on the transplant list and then getting the first call. So the longer it went on, the less I could put it more to the back of my mind. It was like, so, if my phone would ring, I wouldn't be so much sort of, heart in the mouth. I'd still sort of think there would be that initial, oh no, it's okay. But I wouldn't think about it a lot. I was able to put it to the back of my mind, and it was, as I say, it was almost a surprise when the calls came, because I mean, the first two calls came in the middle of the night. So, you're asleep, so it's not even like, so I was able to just put it sort of to the back of my mind and just get on with life, really. I wasn't, there were the restrictions on where I could go. I wasn't allowed to be more than an hour away from home, so there was always that. But it was fine. It wasn't, I was able to put it to the back of my mind.
Yeah. And obviously with your recovery, it sounds like it was very, very tough. And I think that's kind of a misconception that a lot of people have about transplants, if they've not been through it, or, they've never looked into it before, is they think as soon as you have a transplant, life is suddenly very easy again. But like you've said, you're actually still on medication for life. Like, yes, you are in a better place, but there's still a lot that comes with having a new organ inside of you and that anti-rejection stuff. And I don't think people always realise that. They think you're instantly healed and can get on with life. And obviously your recovery was really, really tough. Did you have any other kind of side effects? Because I know with some transplant patients, they've had like having to learn to walk again, they can't eat, drink, having to learn to talk again. I know some of them are very severe in kind of how that's happened. But did you have anything like that, or was your body still relatively
well, there was
the same?
I mean, I'm type 2 diabetic now as a result of it. It's medically induced diabetes, they call it. So it's been brought on by the medication. And so that's changed things. I've now got to inject daily with insulin, and that's just one more thing to do a day. So that's not a massive problem. But the main thing is I had to learn to breathe again.
Right.
Because you try and take you're very tense, and you're a lot of short, sharp breaths. You think that I've got to breathe, but you don't. You're like, and I was getting out of breath because I wasn't breathing properly. I was breathing how I was previously. My body was still telling me, even though I'd had the new lungs and things were different, psychologically, I still couldn't breathe properly, although I could. So I almost had to learn to breathe again, which sounds strange, but I was still breathing, but I had to learn to breathe correctly. So, and that was quite difficult. And I mean, even now, I'm 2 and a bit years post-transplant now. There's I do a lot. I've got a dog now. I've always wanted a dog. This was a perfect excuse for my recovery. It was a perfect excuse for me to get a dog. And I take him out for walks in the morning. We do an hour in the morning. We do an hour at night, late at night as well. And even now, when I'm out on the walks, I'll come to a hill and I'll be at the bottom of the hill, and I'll think to myself, I'm not going to be able to make it up that hill. When I can, even when I get to the top, there's no breathlessness or anything like that. But it's a psychological thing. I'll have it sometimes as well with staircases. Staircases were the bane of my life. I mean, when I was still working, I was quite lucky because I worked for quite a large company, and the majority of the contracts that I would go to, a lot of places were hotels and things like that would have lifts. Now, that's one of the first things I would look at when I've got a job. It's like, well, can I park close to it, and has it got a lift?
Yeah.
You know, and I still get that now, where I'll go into somewhere and I'll see a set of stairs and I'll think, oh, hang on a minute, no, it's all right. That's not. Yeah. It's still in that psyche. It's still there a little bit that you think about it. But yeah, the main thing, answering your question, the main thing I had to, try and do again was learn to breathe. Breathe properly anyway.
And going back to the staff as well, I mean, I've always heard amazing things about Royal Papworth in general as a hospital, and especially for transplant patients. But I just think like transplant staff, organ donation staff, whatever the actual proper term is, they are incredible people. You know, I worked with them at the QE hospital with all the transplant patients, and they they're just incredible people that will just go over and above all of the time. Like, that's why for me, like I said at the start, like transplant stories always hold a very special place to me, because it's one of the first ones that I did work-wise, just like learning about it and interviewing the staff and patients, and they're just so dedicated to supporting their families and to patients. So I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to say on that.
Oh, they're amazing people. I mean, every single person, even from, when I had the lung reduction surgery, I had that at I had that at the old Papworth Hospital. They moved, I say recently, it was a few years ago now, they moved into this state-of-the-art, amazing hospital that is absolutely incredible. It's, even from there, the staff are absolutely amazing. And every single person that I dealt with when I had my transplant, whether it's, even the person that comes in and cleans your room, or, they talk to you, people that bring you food, they were amazing. The nurses, I mean, they'd come in and sit with you at night. I mean, I had a real problem with sleep. I just wouldn't sleep. I'd sit up. I did a lot of crosswords, and I watched a lot of Netflix while I was in hospital. And I'd sit up, and they'd just come in and they'd come and sit with you, and they'd talk to you, and they wouldn't just come in and say, for instance, like, I'd have to have like all my vital, all my statistics, all my tests done in the middle of the night. I'd have to have my blood pressure done at like 2 a.m, and again at 6 a.m, and your blood oxygen levels and all those sorts of things while they're monitoring your blood sugars. They'd come in. They wouldn't just come in like a machine and do it. They'd sit down. They'd have a little chat to you. They'd ask how you were, and everyone was amazing. And again, going back to the nurse I say that I credit with saving my life, Laura. Amazing. I mean, even when she'd go off a shift, as she was going off a shift, she'd just come in and say, look, I'm off now, good luck, and I'll be back on in, 3 days or such and such, just, I've made sure everyone's going to look after you. I've told them you're a special patient, which, says that to everyone. But it's just that little reassuring thing, that little extra mile that they go. And we all know that they don't get paid a lot of money for what they do. But what they do is absolutely incredible. And even, the care that I've had since, the aftercare now, you have a lot of frequent, every 6 weeks, you're going into hospital, and you're going in, I have to have lung function tests, I'd have to have chest x-rays, I'd have to see a nurse, a transplant nurse, go in and see the transplant doctor. I went from 6 weekly to 3 monthly, and I've just recently gone to 6 monthly as well, which is a real milestone apparently.
Yeah.
And there's 2 transplant doctors that I see regularly, incredible people. I mean, they know everything. You'll go in, they're friendly, they'll talk to you. Although Caroline's a little bit scary. If she tells you to do something, you do it. But yeah, they're just incredible people. And it's that personal level as well. Even the transplant nurses, you'll be sat in the waiting room and they'll walk past and they'll say, and you think of all the people that they see, and they'll come over and say hello to you. The lady on the reception desk, this blows me away. This does absolutely blows me away. Now, bearing in mind, I go to this hospital every 3 months. It was every 3 months that I was going in. Now, you go in and you say to them, right, I'm here for my lung function, all those other bits. I walk up and she'll go, morning, Mark. And I'm like, how do you know that? How have
Yeah.
you done that? But it's just on on a personal level, everything there. It doesn't feel like a hospital. It's an amazing place. It's an absolutely incredible, and it's a place that absolutely changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't heap praise on the Royal Papworth Hospital, the doctors, the nurses, the staff there, the cleaners, absolutely everyone, the bloods, people that take your blood. Well, you go in and they'll say, oh, hello, Mark, how you doing? I mean, they've got your name in front of you. But she there's I can't remember the lady's name. It's really bad that I can't remember her name. An Irish lady as well. She'll ask me, she'll remember things that I've spoke to her about 3 months before, and she'll say, how's the puppy? And I mean, there's no way that is on the notes. There is no way that is on her notes. All right, she knows that I've had a transplant and whatever else, but it's those little personal touches. They're just incredible, incredible people. And my one of Faye's sisters, afterwards, she wanted to do a little something just for the hospital to say, sorry, just bear with me.
That's all right.
But I didn't think this was going to happen. Yeah, I get a little bit emotional when I think about this. But she ran two marathons in 2 weeks, and she got a lot of sponsors, and it blew me away how many people. I think she raised not much shy of £3,000 of just friends and family that were donating, and it absolutely blew me away that someone would do that.
Yeah. But that's a massive testament to you as well, Mark, because I don't think you've probably processed what you've actually been through. Like, I know that we've been having a laugh and a joke about you being so blasé about it, like going into transplant and stuff, but what you've been through is a massive life-changing surgery, and it is incredible. So I think, yeah, absolutely, it's normal to be upset about it, because it's a huge, huge thing you've been through. And that was something I was going to ask you, like, mentally afterwards, have you personally had any support, or are you type of person, like, not everyone wants just that support and talk about it, but yeah, what has it been like afterwards, when you reflect on everything you have been through?
It's difficult, really, because I still don't think I've processed what I've been through. I don't think I was speaking to Faye about this a little while ago, and I think one day it's going to hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't fully, because I'm very, blasé about things, and I've just, right, that's done, let's move on to the next thing. I don't think mentally it's really hit me, and I do think one day it's gonna hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm gonna realise what's happened. But it has been tough because emotionally, I mean, I get very emotional when I think about things, and it has been tough, but I don't think it has fully hit me as yet. And I mean, it was 13th of November 2022 when I actually had the transplant, so it's 2 and a bit years, but I still don't think that I've fully processed it. I'm very normally before this. I'm a very private person. I mean, for instance, Faye was the only person that I wanted at the hospital. I didn't want any friends, family, anyone coming to visit me. I've got my side of the family anyway is quite small. I've got 2 brothers, and that's it. I have no. My dad died, and we don't talk about the other one. But so I haven't got a big family. But then I don't have children. I made that decision when I was ill that it wasn't. That wasn't for me. I didn't know how I would turn out in the end, but that was something that wasn't an option for me anyway. But Faye's side of the family, I mean, she's one of 5, and she's got 4 sisters, and they've got like nieces and nephews and children. And one of my it's bizarre. One of my, I call her my niece. She's Faye's niece, Kelly. She this is I'm getting a bit.
Honestly, Mark, take your time. Like this, it is emotional, and you're absolutely allowed to be upset about it. It doesn't make you, a weak person. And I think this is exactly what men need to see as well. Like, it's absolutely fine to be upset. You've been through a life-changing thing.
I know it's fine, but I get.
And it's nothing to be embarrassed about either. Like,
I know, I'm not embarrassed by it. I just, you feel like you don't think about it. You think that you've passed these things, and then there's little things that you think about, like I said with Michelle, who ran the marathons for me.
Yeah.
And Kelly, my niece, she said to me that she was going to send me a joke every single day to make me laugh, like while I was in hospital, and she did. And I mean, it's not like she's not 5 years old. She's in her 30s. She's I think she's a photo editor for National Geographic magazine. She's not a child. She's amazing, amazing human being. And some of these jokes that she sent me as well were I was quite surprised that they came from her. But every single one of them made me laugh, and I looked forward to every single one of them every day. And it's just little things like that people do for you. Those little things. And another niece, she sent me some biscuits. These handmade biscuits were I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was Happy New Lungs. And these biscuits made out, and it's just little things like that. And it was nice, even though I didn't want people there. I don't like being the centre of attention. I don't like people fussing over me, but knowing that they were all there, and, colleagues of mine, like work colleagues, guys, one of my, he passed away recently, which hit me like a ton of bricks. A friend of mine, Stuart, he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, December just gone, after a long fight with it. And I mean, he was the strongest, fittest man I've ever met in my life. I worked with him for 15 years. He had 1 day off sick in 15 years. And then he was, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it took him away. Every day he's in this WhatsApp group, and he's messaging Faye, and he was phoning me when after the surgery once I could take, and he was amazing with me. And I've got friends that I still meet up with now. We all meet up once a month that we've known since we were like 8-9 years old, and they were all messaging and calling me, and it was lovely to know that these people cared. And it was, although I didn't want the people there, I took a lot out of the fact that they all still, why would anyone care about me? That's kind of, that was kind of the attitude I had, but people did. And that was amazing.
Yeah. And it's incredible how much families pull together. Like, I've seen it firsthand from, speaking with transplant patients previously and being in hospital with them whilst they're waiting for that call and waiting for the transplant. And it is incredible how much family and friends will group together. And I think it is always a way, like, obviously going through what you've been through is tough, but I think transplant patients are always the most moved by their loved ones and like how they come together in that time, because it is terrifying for them as well. It is just incredible. And like when we spoke before we started recording, like, this is the first proper time you've properly told your story, isn't it? Like, going back through it all, and also in a public format, so it is going to be difficult for you to reflect on everything.
I've talked about my story with friends and family, but there are parts, I've talked about different parts at different times with different people, but this is kind of, especially on a public platform as well, that I've shared all these things together in the same talk. So it's, I'm not shy to talk about the whole, and I'm a champion of organ donation. I'll shout from the rooftops about, because it has changed my life massively, and I'm not shy to talk about it to people. If people, I mean, looking at me, if I walk down the street and you'd have no idea that I was a double lung transplant patient. Well, you'd have no idea that anyone's a transplant patient, really. So you find that when you do talk to people and people ask, they'll ask things like, like my barber, for instance. I mean, even my barber was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I've been going to the same barber for about 10 years. And just after I had my hair cut, this unruly beard that I sport, that I have here was even more unruly. It really needed sorting out. And one of the big things I wanted doing when I came out of hospital is I wanted a haircut, and I wanted my beard tidied up. And I remember phoning my barber. It's a place called Blind Barber. The guy who owns it is actually blind in one eye.
Okay, yeah.
This side of my hair is great. That side's rubbish. No, I say that to everyone, but no, they're all of them, every single one of them. They're amazing. And I spoke to one of the barbers there, a girl called Amy, and I'd said to her, look, I need to have this haircut, but this is my restrictions. And she said, right, I will make sure that you are the only person that's in the shop. No one else will be in. I will wear a mask at all times. We will put brand new gowns. There'll be fresh gowns that no one else has ever used before, and the shop will be sanitized before you come in, so you can come in and have a haircut. Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow. It's just little things like that. And again, it's when people do things like that for you, you just think, why are you doing that for me? That's not necessary. You could just quite turn around and say, oh, it's probably probably a best. You know, she could have quite easily turned around and said it's probably a good idea that, you know, you wait, or because of the infection. And it's just little things like that, little gestures and things like that. And you think, why, you know, why do people care? It's amazing. Getting emotional
Absolutely.
again.
You can be as
Emotional
emotional
about a
as you
haircut.
want.
What is going on with me?
Well, this is something I was going to ask you as well. Obviously, you're going to get emotional because of what you've been through, and that's perfectly normal. But when I've spoken to some transplant patients, they've said that they've kind of like adopted new traits from like having a new organ. So like someone had said to me before, like they now like new foods and stuff, or certain places. I think I spoke to this woman previously and she was like, I just felt really connected to Dublin. She's like, I have no idea why. And then she managed to find out a bit about her donor and realise that that person was from Dublin. Has anything like that happened to you? Have you noticed anything? Obviously, I know you're still, you know, quite early on into still having this organ, organs. But yeah, have you noticed any changes in yourself that maybe you don't remember before?
Spicy food. I can't eat spicy food. I mean, I was
Yeah.
never really good with spicy food anyway, but I mean, I'm terrible now. I mean, I can't even eat a mild Nando's because
Yeah.
it's too spicy for me, which is to the amusement of a lot of my mates and other things. I mean, one of them asked me the other day if salt and vinegar crisps were too spicy for me, because, you know, they take great pleasure in, you know. But yeah, I just cannot eat any sort of spicy food. My taste buds seem a lot, you know, a lot better, a lot more sensitive. I seem to be able to taste things a lot better. But that's probably the only thing. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, I think my donor was rubbish at golf, because that seems to have happened to me recently.
Yeah.
But perhaps that's down to my abilities more than the actual donor. But no, all joking aside, it's just the taste is different since then. I don't seem to be able to tolerate any sort of spicy foods at all.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you know, I could go sort of not quite vindaloo, but I could eat something that was a little bit spicy. But now, no, nothing at all. But that's probably the only change I'd say that there has been.
Yeah. And on Instagram, you obviously talk about organ donation quite a lot and raising awareness of it. Have you managed to convince, I don't know, any of your friends or family, like since you've been through this and obviously they've watched you go through it, has anyone actually signed up, or were they all signed up? Like, have you managed to change anyone's kind of perspective on it?
Yes. There's been quite a few. Another one of Faye's sisters, Sonia, she signed up to the organ donation, and there's a lot of people that friends that I spoke to that privately said to me that, you know, since, you know, we've seen what you've gone through and we've seen what it's done for you.
Yeah.
And you know, we've signed on. Well, it's different now, isn't it? You have to opt out of the register, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's the way it works. So yeah, people have said that they want it. You know, I mean, you know, people have even gone into far as having it put into their wills that that's what they want, and you know, they've had some sort of, you know, not will as such, but you know what I mean. Their last,
Yeah.
you know, their requests that that's what they want done, and again, that's amazing because
Yeah.
you know, I'm living a different life. I can't even put into words how different it is for me now. Just everything's changed. You know,
Yeah.
I've changed. I've got a change of job now. I've moved out from being an engineer. I now teach.
Amazing.
I'm training to be a teacher, and I've just done an assessor's qualification. I still work within the same industry. I work within the fire and security industry, but I work for a company now where I'm a training and development tutor, and I work with apprentices, and I have them on. I've got a group in next week actually where I have them on for a week in, and we just do teaching and we go through things, certain aspects and elements of the job that I didn't even think that, you know, I was even capable of doing. It was something that wouldn't even have entered my mind to do, you know, post this surgery. But I was pre-surgery rather. I was offered this job just after the surgery. I was put forward by an old colleague. He said to me, "I think you'd be ideal for this." And I just thought, oh, do you know what? I've got this new chance at life. I spent the last 10 years just coasting in my job. I kept my head down. I didn't want anyone to, you know how ill I was or push for any sort of career progression or anything like that. I just thought I'll just sit as an engineer. I'll do my job. I'll fix these alarms, and that's all I'll do. But now I've got this whole new outlook of life that, you know, I can do these things. I can do now. I've learned all these new different skills as well. I mean, I qualified as an electrician. I worked as an electrician, and then I moved into fire and security. That's what I've done all my life. Now, you know, I'm in my office now at home. You know, I sit in front of a computer all day, and I still travel to offices all around the country that we've got and do some practical stuff with apprentices. But no, primarily I now have an office job. and I've developed all these other skills that, you know, I didn't have before, and I'm loving life, really. It's all completely different. I'm playing golf again now, which is something I didn't do for all throughout the time that I was ill, which is amazing. I still hope to. I did start to play for a transplant football team in London, London Transplant United, but that was so soon after my surgery, and I wasn't ready for it. I broke my collarbone on the second session. I broke my collarbone the day before I started my new job as well, which went down well. So I was just picking up silly little injuries that I didn't need while I was rehabbing as such, while I needed to build up my fitness. So I stopped that, but the plan is that I will play again at some level. Which I never even dreamed would even happen. So yeah, everything is just, my life is so different, and it's amazing. As you know, as I said to you earlier, I don't know anything about my donor, but they have given me, whoever it is, you know, that person, their family have given me the best present that anyone can ever give me. It's bizarre. You know, touching back, I still haven't processed that I've got these lungs. I wasn't born with these. These aren't mine. Someone has given me these. Someone has given me this chance of extra life. And I think, you know, I've never been, you know, I've not been bad in life. I've never been in trouble. I've never done anything seriously. But how did I get these? You know, I don't think I've ever done anything really good in life, you know, for people, or, you know, I try to be as kind and as generous as I can with people. I've never done anything life-changing for someone, but someone's done this for me. Why have they done this for me? What have I done to deserve this? And I count my blessings every single day for it. It's amazing. And as you said on my Instagram, I champion, you know, organ donation, and I will, you know, I'll scream from the rooftops till the day I die.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So important. And I know obviously you don't know anything about your donor. Have you ever thought what you would possibly say to the family if you ever did find out? Have you ever, I know it's such a difficult one, and you know, so many patients that I've spoke to are like, there's so many things I want to say, but I don't want to upset them. I don't know. What do you say to someone whose loved one has done that for you? Have you ever personally thought about it?
I've thought about it loads. I've thought about lots. It's difficult because you can't. I mean, I struggle to put into words, you know, to myself how much it's helped me and what it's done for me. But I just think it's whoever has done this is one of the most amazing. That it's not just that person though as well. It's the family as well. That say for instance, it was someone's son that's done this for me. The reason that son has done that is because the way that their parents have brought them up. You know, it's not just the son that's helped me, it's the parents that have helped me. It's every part of that family. It's every single one of them has had something to do with that person deciding that they want to give this gift to someone else. I can't say thank you, because that's just not enough. You can't say thank you to someone for, you know, for them being responsible for that person. It's really, really difficult. I just think I just give them a big hug. And probably cry a bit more, I would have thought. And I would genuinely love to develop some sort of relationship with them just for their peace of mind, because I want them to I want to talk to them, and I want them to know how bad my life was beforehand to how it is now, and how it is that their son, husband, whoever it was, has done for me. It's just, it's difficult. It's difficult, but it's amazing. I don't know.
It's incredible
it's something I've thought about so much.
Yeah.
But I just think I just hug and cry a lot.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I think that's kind of how it would be. And I'm hoping they'd feel the same. You know, they'd see what it had done, and it would give them, I feel it would give them some sort of peace of mind as well, and some sort of, you know, it's terrible losing a relative. I've just, you know, in the last week, my Faye's mum's passed away, and you know, I've sat there. And she passed away through COPD, related illnesses. So you know, I've kind of seen it firsthand again this way, and it's horrible when someone passes away. But if someone can get some sort of, you know, some sort of peace that their whoever gave me these organs, what they've done for me and how they've changed my life when their life has ended. Then, I mean, if it was me personally, I'd get if it was my son, daughter, wife, husband, I'd get so much out of that. I think, you know, that's that
Yeah.
one final gesture that they've done, and they've
Yeah,
helped
yeah.
this person, and what they've done for them is amazing. So I just love to sit and talk to them, I think,
Yeah.
and just see what comes out after the hugging and the crying.
And you might find they might get in contact, you know, in the next year. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years.
Mm.
They may never get in contact. You know, I think again, it's so personal, isn't it? And it's so individual to each of those families. But I have worked on it on the other side with this incredible family who sadly lost their son, and he became an organ donor. And I think when I asked her that question, I said, from your perspective, would you want to hear from those families that have, you know, received the gift of life from your son? And at first she said, absolutely not. I couldn't bear it. I didn't want to read about it. Now she's like, it's the best thing that's ever happened. So it took her a little bit of time. She just needed a few years. And now she knows everyone that you know, her son was able to support, and that's given her so much comfort that, you know, just knowing that. So if that gives you any little faith as well, you know, I have spoke to someone on the other side of it, and they've said, yeah, it is really challenging. You probably don't want to talk about it at the start or hear from that person. It's nothing against you. But in a few years' time, after, you know, once their grief gets a little bit easier, which it, you know, again, grief is a whole different subject, but a lot of them do want to hear. And yeah, I think, did you say they have to reach out? I always forget the process. Is it
Yeah,
them that has
they
to
have
reach
to
out to
reach out
you?
for you. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to make any sort of. I mean, even so much when I got the call to go in for the transplant, they say to you, "Can you not put anything on social media?"
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, two and two can be put together, and they can
Yeah.
say, right, well, hang on, my son, daughter, husband, you know, that happened to them. That could
Yeah.
be. So yeah, so it has to be completely, which is, you've got to respect that, and you've got to understand that, because it is very, very difficult, especially, you know, if you're going through grief anyway. It's got to be
Yeah.
down to them. You don't want all of a sudden, you know, how would you feel if someone, you know, all of a sudden came up and knocked on your door and says, "Hi, I've got your son's lungs." You know,
Yeah.
it's got to be, that person has got to be the one that makes the contact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. They were all the questions I have for you. Was there anything else with your story that you feel like we've missed?
No, I mean, I don't think so. No, I think that's kind of been it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I've missed off.
Amazing. I mean, well, thank you so much for going through that roller coaster of a ride that you
I really
have been
appreciate you
on.
listening. It's kind of a good therapy to actually talk about it to someone, you know, like yourself, that, you know,
As a
you don't
complete
know me.
outsider.
You don't, you're a complete outsider, and you're genuinely interested in my story as well.
Yeah.
I sometimes think as well, if I talk to someone, I think, oh God, is he going on about it again? Sometimes, like when
Absolutely
I
not.
post on social media, if I'll say like, oh, a year after my, you know, it's been a year since my transplant, or 2 years, and I think people are looking at this thinking, oh, is he going on about it again? Blimey, you've had the transplant, get on with it.
No.
So yeah, no. So it is nice to speak to someone, you know, like yourself, and, you know, share my story, and hopefully, you know, if other people do hear this, and, you know, it might give them a little bit of comfort, or I don't know what they'll get out of it, basically. But, you know, if it helps anyone, if it helps one person, then I'm a happy man.
No, I think it absolutely will. You've offered so much advice through humour as well, which I think people love, because again, like I keep saying, it is an extreme thing that you have been through. You've had life-changing surgery, but I think to have that little bit of humour in there as well helps people, and also showing emotion. That is really, really important for people to have as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, it's
No,
been so
thank you so
lovely
much for your time.
speaking
I
with
really
you.
appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And yeah, your story is super inspiring, Mark. And I'm so glad that you're here, basically. And yeah, just, you know,
No, you'll get me going again. Stop.
continue being you. When you say that you don't understand why people like have done so much to you, it's just because you're a lovely, genuine person. That's why. So
Stop it.
yeah, stop it. I'll start crying as well. This is what I mean. Transplant patients are literally just my favourite patients. The stories are always, they're just, yeah, I just think you're all remarkable people, what you've been through. And obviously, organ donors are incredible, incredible
The people
people.
that give the donors are the more remarkable people. as far as I'm
But
concerned.
so are you guys as well.
Yeah.
Yes, they're incredible what they do and their families, but you guys as well, what you do to raise awareness of it and talk about your stories is, you know, equally as important. So thank you.
Thank you.